Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. In this collection of two sincere and unsettling accounts of encounters with parallel universes, join Nathan in early 2024 and Casey in late 2005 as they miraculously survive near-lethal ordeals. Their lives subtly transform in disquieting ways, leading them to wonder if they have leapt into parallel realities. Premonition or parallel life. In February 2024, a young man named Nathan experienced one of the most vivid and lucid dreams of his life. Nathan, a 29-year-old sales rep, worked a mostly remote job that required him to commute to the office once a week. The 2-hour drive each way was a gruelling commute, but Nathan had found a way to make it more bearable by taking back farm roads for half of the journey, avoiding the heavy traffic that plagued the main highways. On the night of February 11th, Nathan had a dream that would change his life forever. In the dream, he was driving home from work, cruising at a speed of 85 miles per hour on the familiar back roads. As he approached a no-passing zone, he noticed 2 cars coming towards him, a white Toyota and a silver Honda following closely behind. Nathan could clearly see the emblems on the cars, and he felt his grip tighten on the steering wheel as the cool air from the AC brushed against his face. As the cars drew closer, Nathan watched in horror as the Honda suddenly pulled out to pass the Toyota, apparently unaware of Nathan's approaching vehicle. With no time to react, Nathan could only mutter, "Here we go," before closing his eyes and bracing for impact. The 2 cars collided head-on, both travelling at nearly 100 miles per hour. Nathan woke up instantly, his body racked with pain, and the rest of the day felt surreal and off, as if something about his life had fundamentally changed. The dream had been so vivid and unsettling that Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just a nightmare. He wondered if it was possible that he had witnessed an alternate version of himself die in a parallel life, where things had played out just a little differently. The following day, on February 12th, Nathan was on his way home from his weekly day at the office when he suddenly experienced an urgent sense of clarity during the latter half of his drive. He looked up and saw a white Toyota with a silver Honda close behind, just like in his dream. Nathan felt a wave of nausea wash over him, and he instinctively took his foot off the gas, preparing to swerve onto the shoulder to avoid the impending collision. As he approached the cars, the Honda pulled out slightly, but upon seeing Nathan's car, it quickly darted back behind the Toyota. Nathan passed the vehicles without incident, but he couldn't shake the eerie feeling that he had avoided certain death. He wondered if he had somehow crossed over into a parallel reality, one where he had narrowly avoided the fatal accident that had claimed the life of his alternate self. In the days that followed, Nathan began to notice subtle changes in his surroundings and the people around him. His boss, Michael, whom Nathan had always known as an antisocial and perpetually single man, was suddenly friendly and polite, even mentioning that he had recently moved in with his girlfriend. When Nathan expressed his surprise, saying, "Girlfriend?" Michael simply replied, "Yes, my girlfriend." The matter-of-fact way in which he referred to his girlfriend, as if it was common knowledge within the office, unnerved Nathan, as it was his first time ever hearing about her. Nathan also noticed that a building he frequently passed on his commute had changed colour and was now positioned differently than he remembered. These small discrepancies continued to stack up, and he began to feel as if the composition of his entire life had somehow discreetly transformed. It was as if Nathan was in a familiar room, but all the furniture had shifted 2 inches to the left. Even the personalities of his loved ones seemed to have undergone subtle changes. His partner Emma, his parents, and his best friend Dan were still the people he knew and loved, but they weren't quite the same. They were slightly different, as if they were alternate versions of themselves. As Nathan struggled to come to terms with these understated yet undeniable changes, he began to research the possibility of parallel universes and the idea that one could somehow cross over from one reality to another. He searched online for similar experiences, hoping to find others who could help him understand what was happening to him. As Nathan delved deeper into the subject, he began to wonder if his dream had been a premonition of sorts, a warning from the universe that he was about to cross over into an alternate reality. He couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt, knowing that his alternate self had perished in the accident while he had survived. Amidst his search, Nathan found himself grappling with perplexing questions around why his experience happened the way it did. He wondered, if parallel lives are synchronized in time, how could I have witnessed the death of an alternate version of myself in the future? And if my premonition already prevented the fatal accident, why would I need to switch lives at all? In his search, Nathan stumbled upon an online community dedicated to the discussion of parallel universes and alternate realities. He shared his story, detailing the vivid dream, the near-miss accident, and the subtle changes he had observed in his life since then. To his surprise, other users reported similar experiences, many also claiming to have crossed over into parallel universes following traumatic events or near-death experiences. As the days turned into weeks, Nathan slowly began to accept his new reality, adapting to the subtle changes in his surroundings and relationships. He knew that he might never fully understand what had happened to him, but he was grateful for the second chance at life he had been given. A life-changing fall. In 2005, a high school sophomore named Casey and his brother decided to embark on a hiking trip in the mountains near their grandmother's house in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a crisp Thanksgiving morning on November 24th when the 2 young men set out to conquer the terrain they had explored many times before. However, this time they were determined to reach the very top of the ridge, a feat they had never attempted before. As they made their way up the familiar route, Casey and his brother pushed themselves beyond their usual stopping point, venturing into more treacherous territory. The thrill of the challenge drove them forward, and before long they found themselves standing atop the mountain, their hearts racing with exhilaration. But what happened next would forever change the course of Casey's life. In a moment of youthful overconfidence, he suggested they race down the opposite side of the ridge, a path they had never taken before. His brother, caught up in the excitement, agreed, and the two set off on their separate ways. As Casey descended the unfamiliar terrain, he quickly realised the gravity of his mistake. The mountainside was steep and covered in loose, soft sand, making it nearly impossible to maintain a foothold. With each step, he found himself sliding faster and faster, his hands grasping desperately at the mountain and any plant he could reach, but to no avail. Before he knew it, Casey was in a near vertical position, his feet and hands clinging to the unstable surface. In a last-ditch effort to regain control, he attempted to launch himself onto what appeared to be a solid ledge to his right. But as he landed, the ground beneath him gave way, and he began to slide once more, this time at an alarming speed. Casey's heart raced as he tried to slow his descent with his feet and hands, but the momentum was too great. Suddenly he hit a rock ledge, and his trajectory changed. He was launched into the air, heading face first down a sheer drop that he later measured to be approximately 5 stories high. As he plummeted towards the rocks below, a single thought consumed his mind: "This is how I die." And then everything went black. For what felt like an eternity, Casey was enveloped in darkness, but then a loud rushing white noise filled his ears, growing louder with each passing second. It was a sound he could only compare to the crashing of ocean waves over his head. As the noise intensified, Casey felt his entire body begin to vibrate and shake, the white noise feedback seeming to reverberate through his very being. With all his strength, Casey forced himself back to consciousness. As he opened his eyes, he found himself sliding on his back at the bottom of the mountain. Instinctively, he jumped to his feet, his hands frantically feeling his limbs, checking for any signs of paralysis. It took him a full 20 seconds to realise that if he were paralysed, he wouldn't be able to move at all. Next, Casey checked for broken bones, but miraculously he found none. It was then that 2 young children, no younger than 10, ran up to him, their eyes wide with concern. "We thought you died," they exclaimed, their voices trembling with shock. Casey had no idea who these children were or what they were doing in such a dangerous area, but their words confirmed the gravity of what had just transpired. They claimed to have witnessed his fall, but Casey never saw them again. 10 or so minutes later, Casey's brother had made his way down the mountain, and Casey attempted to explain what had just happened. Together they checked for injuries, discovering that Casey's back was covered in blood and scratches, yet his shirt remained intact, without a single tear or cut. Upon returning home, Casey discovered that certain aspects of his life seemed to have changed. The layout of his grandmother's house was slightly different, with rooms arranged in an unfamiliar pattern. Moreover, he found photographs of himself and his family that he had no recollection of ever being taken, depicting events and occasions that he could not recall. In the weeks following the incident, Casey found himself back in his hometown, still processing the strange ordeal. As he walked through the familiar streets, he caught sight of Miranda, a classmate he had known for years, walking on the opposite side of the road. Excited to see a familiar face, Casey called out to her and quickly crossed the street to catch up. However, as he approached Miranda and struck up a conversation, he was met with a puzzled expression on her face, as if she had no idea who he was. Casey tried to remind her of their shared experiences at school, mentioning specific classes they had been in together, and even referencing an inside joke they had shared. But Miranda insisted that she had never seen him before. Confused and disheartened, Casey pressed further, desperately trying to jog her memory. He brought up their mutual friends and the time they had worked together on a class project. But no matter how much she tried, Miranda maintained that she had no recollection of him or any of the experiences he described. As the conversation drew to an awkward close, Casey found himself even more confused and disoriented than before. Since the incident, he hadn't been able to shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with his reality, and the encounter with Miranda only served to reinforce this unease. Nearly 20 years later, Casey still struggles to understand how he survived such a horrific fall. Was it nothing more than a lucky landing? Deep down, from the strange sensations to the life alterations, he knows that November 24th, 2005 was the day he probably died. The thought of his brother in another reality encountering his lifeless body at the bottom of that mountain still sends chills down his spine. While he may never fully understand the nature of the forces that may have brought him to this parallel realm, Casey holds on to the belief that his survival was not merely a lucky coincidence, but rather a glimpse into the infinite possibilities that lie beyond death.